Okay, so today is the second day of our interview with Barry Trower, and we'll start with Barry reading something to us which both of us believe is going to be really important.
Three or four different little excerpts, and this is a part of his speech.
Mm-hmm.
The high office of the president has been used to format a plot to destroy the America's freedom, and before I leave office, I must inform the citizens of this plight. He's talking about microwaves being used against the citizens for their freedom, which can also harm and be used as mind control and to cause illness,
Mm-hmm.
and for invasion of privacy.
Mm-hmm.
The speech was made at Columbia University, November the 12th. 10 days later, he was assassinated.
You know, this is so important because most people do know, or let's say many people do know that he was going to expose some plot, but most people think that he was about to expose is the secret society of the Freemasons and the power of the Anglo-American financial mafia. But this goes directly to what we've been talking about, the dangers of microwave radiation.
Absolutely. He was going on with that. He was going to expose the military
Mm-hmm.
and the vast industrial complex.
Mm-hmm.
On top of this, 1990, US President Ronald Reagan authorized the top secret project Sleeping Beauty mind control, using radio frequencies to disrupt the human nervous system, unhinge a man's mind, paralyze ability to reason and react, causing rage, panic, lethargy. And in the same 1993, although there was before here, internal FDA, Food and Drug Administration, their memo states that data strongly suggests that microwave radiation promotes cancer.
So does this mean, Barry, I mean, we've always been aware of the fact that mind control plays a big role in manipulating the people. We used to think, or I used to think, some of the experts that we spoke with, that this is all a relic, more or less, of the Third Reich, of, you know, how the Americans got a hold of many of the major perpetrators and people who conducted all kinds of mind control experiments during the Third Reich through Operation Paperclip. But this goes to the heart of this, right? Because all of a sudden we're talking about something that is palpable, meaning microwave radiation.
Yeah. This wasn't Germanic. This was between the Soviets and the United States,
Mm-hmm.
going back into the 40s, even the 30s, 40s, 50s.
So that's even before World War II.
Oh, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've got a little timetable here.
Mm-hmm.
We're going back here. The USSR used weapons since 1949,
Mm-hmm.
Operation Lydia. Also in the United States, 1950, mind control devices. Lydia was from up to 1952, where they could interfere with brain frequencies. They could cause sterility, baldness, eye defects in 53. This is just experimenting.
Mm-hmm.
The 1953, the decision was made to keep the military out of the picture to avoid lawsuits. Pulse was recognized as extremely harmful for all systems of the body.
Mm-hmm.
56, it was practiced as a weapon at that time. And of course, then you went on to Pandora and other things.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a few other things I'd like to read you just before.
Yeah.
And then we can photograph any of these you want.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to suggest that you order the last 3-4 back editions of this journal.
Mm-hmm.
It's a scientific journal. People like myself write articles in it,
Mm-hmm.
and it's peer reviewed by professors.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's about $20 a year for the whole.
Mm-hmm.
But you can order electronically the last few editions, which I would suggest.
I will do that.
This is the latest one. That's autumn 2022. US appeal judges in 2021.
Mm-hmm. An appellate.
The US appeal judges,
Mm-hmm.
plural, called such thermal limits by the International Commission for Non-Ionizing Radiation as arbitrary and capricious.
Mm-hmm.
I've got the history of everything here.
That's really important.
Yeah, and here, these are legal cases to do with the US,
Mm-hmm.
and they publish these every edition. It's only quarterly. USA refusal of antenna upheld in a landmark decision. Judge Frederick Block, senior United States District Judge for the Eastern District of New York, found that these people were justified in denying an application of 18 antenna. The judge quoted the Telecommunications Act. Nothing in this chapter shall limit or affect the authority of a state or local government. Other decisions regarding the placement, construction, and modification of persona wireless services facilities. Most importantly, the judge ruled that the provisions of the 1996 Act do not necessarily apply to wirelesses, broadband, and other services. So you've got the judges there coming down on the people.
Mm-hmm.
Another one here, US mobile phone case restarts after 21 years. Murray versus Motorola, case number.
Mm-hmm.
DC Supreme Court. And this is filed by, lawsuit filed by Michael Patrick, but 5 others with brain tumors where they've held their mobiles.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just seeing who the judge is. It's a case that they're really in the US. Mm-hmm. They started again because of all the new evidence.
Because you know why this is so important. Because I have some close friends and colleagues in the US who were led to believe that it is no use fighting 5G or microwave radiation in general. But this shows us that the opposite is true, that there's still some judges out there, still some courts out there who are willing to uphold the rule of law, even with respect to these companies.
Yeah. Another one here, US class action by individual states rejected. The FCC was negligent. New radio frequency radiation authority needed.
That sounds promising. They want new evidence.
And one here, this one will interest you. Lawsuit, tumor killed 49-year-old US attorney R.F. Kennedy Jr. and Hunter Laundy are representing the family of the late Reverend Frank Arson Walker, who died 31st of December from glioblastoma brain tumor, or what Lundy called cell phone tumor, in a lawsuit against Motorola. So this is one going on now According to Lundy, Kennedy has a series of patients from the 1990s showing the telecoms industry knew what was emanating from their cell phones and destroying human cells. I've got everything here he needs.
That's perfect. That's absolutely perfect.
But I would recommend you've got, I'll put the websites on here where you can contact them. I would recommend you get the last 2-3 editions of this.
I'll take photographs.
We'll film these. I've got all the websites and things there. It's £20 for a year, which is $20.
Yeah, that's no big deal.
And they go through here. The one in this as well. They follow up on cases. This is to do with your pilots. Hundreds of scientific studies linking radio frequency radiation to serious medical issues, DNA damage, rare brain cancers, glioma, acoustic neuroma, salivary tumors, heart disease, diabetes, sperm abnormalities, reduced volume of the brain's grey matter, damage to white matter, neuropsychiatric disorders such as anxiety and depression, and early onset of Alzheimer's. And this is in pilots. And
this is not just in military pilots, but
it'll be in all pilots.
All pilots, but I suspect that the situation is even worse for military pilots.
Oh, absolutely. ES and cancer in air crews. This is an American one. The 2021 deaths of fellow USAF pilots. It's all here about deaths from US pilots.
Yeah.
And about when to have intercourse and when not to if you want children. But it's all in this.
So does that mean that US pilots are explicitly warned of this danger?
No, it's being kept from them. It says here, it's being kept from them. But they are slowly finding out from people like us.
Yeah.
But there's a whole thing there about US pilots.
Yeah.
It's being kept from the military. But we'll photograph all these.
I will, yes.
And this one here, Simon Best, there is a brilliant article in here.
That's the friend you alluded to yesterday.
I've known the editor of this, Michael Bevington, 40 years. He is a truly honest chap. And I've known this one for 40 years. He is a truly honest chap.
Yeah.
This is Simon Best. And there's an article in here to do with the United States weaponizing the weather with HAARP.
Now we have the intersection with geoengineering.
How climate change has been used to conceal geoengineering. And he goes on in the last section to discuss how it links into the coronavirus.
That is extremely important right now because that completes the picture with microwaves being center stage.
Yeah, with microwaves being center stage. It's got here boatloads of disaster capitalist cash continue to be poured into the deep pockets thanks to the carbon lies and most recently lies around COVID. Immediately after signing away their sovereignty, nations paid 90 trillion energy infrastructure, and it goes on about COVID. But I'll go on to his page here. But you need the last you need the last 2 or 3 editions.
Yes.
And this one.
Yeah.
And I've got all his details here.
I will order them immediately.
And in this one of these ones here, they go on to the one I've just read. They go on to for barristers, solicitors like yourself, lawyers, the conscious and subconscious symptoms and pathways and mechanisms and clinical diagnoses of microwave irradiation. So you can look at it all in a legal, and it's all in that edition there, all the pathways and the conscious and subconscious symptoms. US appeal judges called their 6 minutes arbitrary and capricious. Page 19, 1893 and cancer in 1945 from microwaves, and serious medical issues. And I've got just over here, and then we'll photograph these. You can email the editors, and you can get them electronically through.
Very good.
Through computer.
As PDFs.
Yeah. I just wrote out a very, very simple Janet and John.
That's what we need. Keep it simple, so that people understand.
Yeah. It's one of the beauty of me being a teacher is I can talk. I can explain the most complex of issues in primary school language, which is what teachers have to do.
Yeah, this is exactly what I was taught to do when I became a law professor. Keep it simple. Talk so that your grandmother will understand you.
That's it. Yeah. Right. Here we go. I just wrote out a few things here. 1949, mind control was a full, thriving industry. By 1952, people were concentrating on the brain for altering brain frequencies. 1953, they smudged the law so nobody could get taken to court. 1956, pulsed radiation could be used to cause birth defects, whole organism failure, organ failures, all organ failures. 1962, all cells in the body, all brain function, emotions and moods could be simulated by pulses. 1965, the US military, Canada, NATO, everybody adopted the 6 minute rule to avoid going to court. Cancer was proven in 1971. 1972, 5G was used against dissidents to cause harm, crowd control. That's 5G.
When was that?
72.
5G in 72.
Oh, yeah. I've got the Russian experiments here. I've got the actual paper from the Russian Secret Service for 77, I think it is, where they deliberately exposed 79 people, a herd of cattle, big animals, small animals, everything. And the list, from 5G in the 70s, I've got it in the bundle here.
Now, I forget which document you were talking about yesterday, but you said that had the authorities read what was available to them, they wouldn't have made these mistakes. And because they haven't read them or that particular document, this is my view now, they are to be held liable, legally accountable, both in criminal law and in civil law.
I've got it here. It's on that. You downloaded it yesterday. It was published in Health Physics, April 2002, volume 82, number 4. And I've got it here. The ICNIRP is general guidance for limiting exposures of workers and the general public. It only involves the heating of tissue. For example, they say children, the elderly, some chronically ill people might have a lower tolerance for one or more types of microwave exposure than the rest of the population. There are certain members of the population that will be sensitive and will need separate safety levels. And it says here that for the decision makers, require judgment, decision makers, several steps in their procedures require decision judgments. For example, on renewing the scientific literature and determining appropriate reduction factors.
So in other words, this is exactly what I was referring to. In other words, the decision makers were called upon to regularly update their knowledge with current new evidence. Absolutely. And if they don't do it, of course, they're going to be held liable. But they didn't even read this, apparently, because you mentioned numerous times that you asked these people, have you read this? And of course, they hadn't read it. No. Does not give them immunity. On the contrary.
Would you like me to read you a few legal bits?
Of course, yes.
Okay, I'll just take this apart. This is a brief part of the document that you've downloaded. This is the US Defense Intelligence Agency, 1972 to 1983. If the more advanced nations of the West are strict in the enforcement of stringent exposure standards, there could be unfavorable effects on industrial output and military function.
Meaning, this is going to cost us money, and it's going to make it harder for the military to use these weapons. In other words, they are sacrificing the people for money and the deep state's military.
Exactly. And then they go on. Personnel exposed to microwave radiation, this is the important bit, below thermal level. This is very, very, very low level. The most common subjective complaints, and then we go on, headache, fatigue, perspiring, dizziness, menstrual disorders, irritability, agitation, tension, drowsiness, sleeplessness, depression, anxiety, lack of concentration, and then it goes on.
But you know, Barry, this is
straight down the page. And
we'll have to make this available to the general public.
And this has already been proven now. It can penetrate the blood-brain barrier. This could allow neurotoxins in the blood to cross. As a result, an individual could develop severe neuropathological symptoms, either die or become seriously impaired neurologically.
Now, what is most surprising to me, well, maybe not any longer, is that these are exactly the adverse effects that are attributed to COVID-19. But it looks like the true cause of all this could very well be exposure to microwave radiation.
Biological health effects and hazards of microwave radiation. That is also on the top document here, which was published in 1971. 2,000 references they have of harm from microwave. This is from the United States Medical Research Unit. Biological phenomena, effects, and clinical manifestations attributed to microwave radiofrequency radiation. This one here, 1973, biological effects, health hazards of microwave radiation. 1973, World Health Organization conference, Warsaw, Poland. 107 different categories of harm, and it is classified as today top secret.
Wow.
Here we go. I've just read that one to you. I won't go through a few of these.
Yes, please.
This is one I want to go through, legal. This really sums up most of the legal. Yeah, here we go. I must just put my paper clip on this. Otherwise, all the papers get mixed up, and then your friends turn up and say, "Can you get me?" And I pick it up, and there's a pile of papers all over the floor. But I mean, you can win any case with this.
That's legal. What it, yeah, absolutely. I thought it to be unimaginable that these things even exist.
Yeah, but they do exist, and I've got them. But you won't have any of these because they're all Cold War stuff.
Yeah.
This is a conclusion by attorneys at law, a whole law firm, a Danish law firm, BONNOR, advocates at law. Their conclusion, it is the conclusion of this legal opinion that establishing and activating a 5G network as it is currently described would be in contravention of current human and environmental laws enshrined in the European Convention of Human Rights, the UN Convention of the Rights of the Child, EU regulations, and the Bonn-Bern Conventions. Here, this is a joint letter, which I have a copy of, to all of the Nordic prime ministers, from Rainer Nyberg, Professor Emeritus, Finland, Leonard Hardell, Professor Emeritus, Sweden, and they are talking about introduction of 5G. And
without, of course, knowing that they had been experimenting with 5G since the 1970s.
They know this here. They say, such experiments are totally unlawful according to the Nuremberg Code, the Declaration of Human Rights, the Declaration of Children's Rights, according to the polluter pays the principle, the polluter has to pay for all of the harm they have caused to humans and or the environment. And they say here, which I've already said, that the Russian experiment was only over 15 hours, and you're subjected to more than twice that dose. But after 15 hours, they diagnosed problems from 5G and this was across all of the species, humans and animals, skin, liver, heart, brain, adrenal glands, blood, and then they go on to the fetuses, children, stem cells, human sperm, honeybees will be much more sensitive. It goes into the mathematics of the wing total area per volume of, but that's from the Nordic, from the two leading professors to the Nordic prime ministers.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
No, that's all right. Okay.
Okay. This is the original Russian paper I have. It's roughly translated, but this is the 1977 paper. And just in the main introduction, studies conducted in humans and animals revealed that millimeter waves, which is 5G, caused changes in the body manifested in structural alterations in skin, internal organs, qualitative and quantitative changes in the blood and bone marrow, reflex activity, tissue respiration, enzyme participation, nucleic metabolism, and they go on to describe the experiment. I think that's it. Yeah.
They knew all of this.
Sorry?
They knew all of this.
Yeah, we all knew all of this.
And the decision makers should have known all of this had they read the document.
Yeah. And finally, I'll do these legal things and I'll put all this back together again.
How did they ever explain that they didn't read the document?
Well, they can't.
That's how we'll get them.
Here we go. This is my case. This is my case against the first defendant, the Secretary of State for Health and Social Care, the Secretary of State for the Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, the third defendant, Secretary of State for Digital, Cultural Media, and the laws in this country, the absence of due investigation of the nature and extent of the risks to the safety of individuals and human health by the relevant United Kingdom authorities, the absence of appropriate measures, system safeguarding steps to address the identified risks or potential risks. These could apply to America. A failure to adopt and apply a precautionary principle or informed foresight to the exposure of non-consenting children, adults at risk to harm. The law provides a framework that demonstrates the unlawfulness of the intention and errors of the executive bodies we have challenged, holding to account the executive or legislative authorities to comply with the law and legal duties is undoubtedly a proper, essential function for the court, especially in context of protection of individuals.
I have nothing to add to that.
Yeah.
That's clear enough.
It goes on. And finally, you was asking me about this yesterday. the electromagnetic waves, this is the actual document. This is the International Agency for Research on Cancer. And radio frequency electromagnetic fields group 2B is in the same group as, and my argument is would you take these into a classroom where you've got Wi-Fi?
Yeah. That was the Oregon case, right?
Yeah. Lead, DDT, gasoline, exhaust fumes, HIV type 2, chloroform, mercury, and usually some really clever people that have heard a rumor but don't know what they're talking about will come up and say, aha, but so is coffee and so are sausages, which is correct. And my instant reply is, have you read the paper concerning sausages and concerning coffee? No. Well, coffee refers to the Mediterranean coffee that is reboiled and reboiled and reboiled and is very concentrated. And it is the compounds formed in that can cause cancer. And sausages is very similar. It isn't your normal packet of sausages from the butcher that you have with bacon and eggs. It is the compressing of the compounds when all the goo is mixed and mashed up. It is under high pressure, the compounds that slowly form, and you would have to eat a lorry load a week or a month to get yourself any harm.
Yeah.
But
so they're not talking about what we would call regular coffee or regular sausages, but they're talking about reprocessed and reprocessed and reprocessed. Yeah.
So what I would like to do is photocopy I just need to keep these in order.
Yeah.
So when your friend comes and says to me, you said you've got this, I can say, yes, I have. And here it is. But I can win any case on my own with everything I've got here.
I absolutely believe it.
Against me is that I do not have the status
of an expert in this country.
Here in this country.
Yeah, but in any other country you can, because you are an expert. Yeah, there's no doubt about that whatsoever. And if you look at what and if you look at how they this is basically the reason, in my view at least, why they banned you from campus and why they shredded your PhD thesis, because they didn't want you to be able to testify as an expert. It's as simple as that.
Well, I mean, apart from that, all PhDs on display in the library of the university. So once I'd written it and had it published, it would be in the library for everybody to come and research with all of this in. And they didn't want that. They did not want it in their library.
Yeah, makes perfect sense to me. But it is also very crude and very simple once you look behind the scenes. Truly mind-boggling. I had seen videos of you giving presentations probably since the late 1980s or so, or maybe a little later. But it was very hard for me to believe this. But that doesn't have anything to do with me not being able to understand what kinds of harmful effects microwaves have. It has more to do with the fact that I just couldn't fathom that our governments would be lying to us about all this. That's the real problem. Once you get across that threshold, anything is possible. And that's only when you make the right choices. You have to know this. You have to be aware of the fact that our governments and our mainstream media are not ours. They're owned by what Catherine Austin Fitts calls Mr. Global, the criminal psychopaths on the other side.
But I don't know if you've watched it. My talk, as I said, to the University Medical School and the Council at the Phoenix Theatre, Exeter. Have you watched that?
I'm not sure if I saw that one. I saw a number of videos.
Just before the lockdown, just before the COVID lockdown. In fact, it was the day before the lockdown. The University Medical School here wanted to know about everything to do with this because they were being lied to. And the government also wanted to know, the local government for the whole county, they wanted to know. And they wanted me to tell them the truth with documentary proof. They said, can you come and give us the truth with documentary proof and hold up the document and then answer questions on the brain and everything that we will throw at you and the law. And we want the environmental influences as well as the human influences. And I said, yes. And I can get it sent to you electronically if you want, that whole lecture.
Well, here's the thing. As far as the law is concerned and the judiciary is concerned, there are few places in this world where the judiciary still functions, where it has not been infiltrated. And there are a few venues in the United States. You have quoted some of their decisions, but you have to be lucky to find the right judges, to find the right venue where you do get a fair hearing, because that's what it's all about. It's all about the facts. It's not about the legal analysis. That almost comes automatically, but you have to be able to establish the facts. So you need a court of law that will listen to your experts and look at your documentary evidence.
Well, we were told in the 50s, 60s, that it would cause cancer. It was known that it would cause cancer. It was known. In fact, documentation is hard, but it was known in the 30s because in the 30s, it was being experimented on, microwaves being experimented on in Area 51 in America.
The infamous Area 51.
The scientist who was doing it. But in the late 30s, it was known that it could cause, and in the 40s, of course, it was developed.
In the 30s means before World War II. So this is not another one of those horrific inventions of the Nazis. Rather, it was around way before the Nazis.
It was way before them. That they picked it up and ran with it. But no, it was way before then. Here we are. Here we are. You photographed this, but page 43. I mean, I have everything I have is documented on, and I've got military cell phone research, hidden cell towers, smart meters. I've got everything documented. Page, I'll say 43. Here we go. Russia mind control, 0.5 to 35 hertz, frequencies of human brain. experimenting with it. I mean, it's endless.
Mm-hmm.
It's endless. 43, 41, 43. Here we are. Right. 1954 onwards, we can alter the behavior of tissues, cells, organs, whole organisms, 6 times higher fetal mortality, birth defects in laboratory animals, and it is known how to induce malignant disease in human cells, cancer.
Mm-hmm. Who is writing this?
It says, particular attention to the effects of man of non-ionizing radiation at these frequencies.
Who's writing that?
This is written by, this is Project Pandora. He's written by Eldon Bird, scientist for the Naval Surface Weapons Center, United States Navy. That's what he said about microwave radiation in 1986, but it's from 1954. And then there's a website you can go to.
Yeah, I'll need to buy both of these books.
Yeah.
By General.
I've indexed them.
Yeah.
I've indexed every page.
By Captain Flynn.
Both books.
Who, I mean, have you ever met any of the people who were conducting these experiments, who were writing about these experiments?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
What kind of people are they? They must be completely without any empathy whatsoever. We're going to have psychologists and psychiatrists look into this, because how can you write about this in such a cold manner and conduct these experiments on unwitting human beings?
I wrote an article, and it's on the internet. I know it is. I've got a copy of it somewhere here, where a sir in this country, sir somebody. I was at a conference with him, and I said, I just went up to him, and they offered to shake your hand. I won't shake their hands. And I said, have you any idea of the distress, the harm, the number of people you are killing just in these experiments? He looked me straight in the eye and he said, what's wrong with that?
What's wrong with him?
I'm trying to think of his name. I mean, it'll come up in a minute. It'll come to me later. So,
these people must think that they're not only above the law, but above any kind of moral or ethics.
Yeah, I've come across 2 of them. And I've come across 2 of them. But he just looked at me and said, what's wrong with that? As if, well, humans, they like experimenting on humans because, especially military, because the military personnel, their diet is known, their movements, their time they get up, the time they go to bed, their dress, everything's known about military people. It's organized, regimented, and they're perfect for a study. Perfect for a study.
Yeah.
And this is why they pick on military personnel.
And they don't treat the military as members of the military as humans. I enlisted. I know because I enlisted in the German army for 12 years. Mm. But I left after a year because I couldn't stand the idiots trying to give me orders.
It's had a lot of bad press, the German army, but of course you've got your Nazi division,
yeah,
and you've got your nice, common, sensible, regular army person,
mm-hmm.
And it's a bit like Putin.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you've got the one person who is so strong around with muscle that you can't go against them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but every single German I've met, and I've done 3 lectures over there, everyone I've met is absolutely nice, beautiful, lovely people. And the ones that came here, I think you know, is it Dr. Regula Muller?
Yes, yeah. I know who she is. Mm-hmm.
We said, both Linda and I, we said to all of them, look, the summer house is in the garden, which is where they all slept
mm-hmm.
in the summer. I said, look, there's a free holiday. All you've got to do is pay your petrol, park on the drive, sleep in the summer house, use the shower and bathroom as you like. And it saves you €100 a night.
Yeah.
We invited everyone back for holiday, every single one.
Yeah. It's you always have to look at the individual person. You can't generalize. I've learned that over the years. You have to look at the individual person. Yeah. And most of the time, with those exceptions that you mentioned, that Sir, whatever his name was, but most of the time on an individual basis, you'll come to see that they're real people. But the exceptions that you mentioned, they're the ones that we need to worry about.
Oh, yeah.
They're the ones who we will have to take to court. Unless, as our friend Martin Schwab always says, he's a devout Christian, the boss will take care of that.
Although they will, they will pay for their sins
mm-hmm.
anyway. But do you have any questions about anything?
I would like to discuss this one. Is the
Wi-Fi thalidomide in the making?
Or was it the one? I have it with me. Yeah. I looked at it last night before I went to bed. It's the one that explains how in 3 generations.
They both are.
Oh, they both are. Okay. Okay.
They both explain, and I can explain the difference.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
This is the one. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, I don't need to say it. I wrote it.
Yeah.
With that, it is the World Health Organization,
mm-hmm.
the scientists at the World Health Organization. I'm trying to think of the name, Dr. Goldsmith.
Uh-huh.
I think he has something over 20 professorships. He's probably the first or second cleverest person on the planet to do with microwaves. Between him and Yuri Gogoryev, the chair of the Russian Federation
mm-hmm.
of Nuclear and Atomic Scientists. But Professor Goldsmith, he studied the attack on the United States Embassy from the Soviet Embassy
mm-hmm.
over the road. And there were so many reports on that, fake reports written on that, he decided to write the proper report. And he said that women exposed to very low level, and people don't appreciate this, but low level radiation, very, very low level, is certainly as dangerous and probably more dangerous than a high level. And people don't appreciate that because,
well, intuitively, they believe if it's a low level, it can't be any dangerous.
Yeah, but in fact, it can be more dangerous because at a low level, you have, from the time we were living in caves and surviving electric storms,
mm-hmm.
And we had some when we were cave people, we developed, as I said, an immune system to repair damage from very high level electromagnetic storms,
mm-hmm.
whether it's the electric vector or the magnetic vector. We have protein 53, we have the nuclear core complex, and we have heat shock proteins within the cell. They will all rush around and defend the cell against any further harm. But when it is very, very low level, like from a transmitter a kilometer away,
mm-hmm.
the radiation is still coming in and it's going through you, but it is below the level that will activate your immune system.
I understand.
So it comes
it's
in.
below the radar, so to speak, of the immune system.
It comes in, and then the harm, it just starts building up and up and up and up. This is why when a transmitter is put a kilometer away, within 18 months, you start to get the results coming out with the local populations.
Mm-hmm.
But it builds up, and by the time it's built up and your body knows you're in trouble, it's too late. The cancers are there. Now, 8 different types of cancer. The cancers are there. The other illnesses are there. And in particular, breast cancer. And when you sleep, when you go to sleep now and you close your eyes, the light coming in your eyes, going to the back of your brain where the sight is, it passes the pineal
mm-hmm.
gland. Now,
which is right here, right? Mm-hmm.
The pineal gland, it has around 30 different types of crystal. They're made of calcite and they're all different.
Mm-hmm.
You okay with that? Yeah.
I'm fine, yeah.
Is it cold enough for you?
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
They're made of calcite and they're different. There are, I think, 30 different types of crystal identified so far. And what these crystals do is they measure in their various frequencies, they measure the amount of light coming through, going to the back of the head, and they also measure the wavelength and what we would determine as color. They would separate the reds, indigo, violets, yellow, blue. They would separate them all out.
Mm-hmm.
Because blue light is a warning system to the hypothalamus in the brain. And if you've got blue light, it warns the hypothalamus, that which runs all your internal clocks, and it is the master clock. It warns the hypothalamus that blue light is coming through the brain and it could mess up your body's circadian rhythms. Hence, people who watch television at night, because a third of what you watch is blue light, whether you recognize it or not.
Have you heard, let me quickly interject, have you heard of the experiment being conducted on Ethiopian children? If I'm not completely mistaken, our good friend Leslie Manookian from the United States told us about the experiment. They're offering um, parents money and free education for their children if they allow these children, and I think 5 million are included in this experiment, if they allow these children to be wearing special goggles that transmit blue light directly into their pineal gland. Have you heard of that experiment?
Yeah, it is immensely. The goggles that they're wearing, the actual limit, from what I've read, for that particular intensity of radiation is around 16 minutes.
Ooh, and this is going on for years.
They're going to get...
What is the goal of this?
Experimentation. That is the goal, experimentation.
Make them into something different, make them into robots?
They want to see how long it takes them to develop cataracts and go blind.
God.
They want to see how it distorts. They will be followed up on their eyes for ages. It's the same as girls in school wearing these badges. They cannot be turned off. I think they're RIFD badges, where they can be tracked anywhere in the school, any time of the day or night. And even going home, they tell the parents that if the girls wear these badges, which are microwave transmitters, they can be tracked anywhere in school. You don't need to register them in class because they're registered automatically because the computer does it. But what they don't know is that they're transmitting microwaves into the breast tissue. And there are some 40 papers I have on why the breasts are more susceptible to breast cancer from microwaves than virtually any other cell in the body. So all these girls wearing these are going to develop breast cancer.
Oh my God.
On that breast. And again, it's another experiment. But coming back to...
Conducted by psychopaths.
Blue light and everything. When you sleep in a microwave field, the calcite crystals in the pineal, they cannot distinguish between ordinary light and the radiation from microwaves, because it still produces an electric current as it goes through. So the pineal, which is in communication with other endocrine systems, it produces, when you close your eyes and you get dark, it then tells the body, okay, we're asleep, it's dark. And then hormones, antibodies, they start rushing around the body and they repair the immune system all night. Now, when you've got your eyes closed, but you've got microwaves going through, as far as your pineal is concerned, it's still daylight. So when you wake up in the morning, you've not had the antibodies and the hormones to repair your immune system. And your immune system can be 40% deficient when you wake up every morning, which is why women who do night work and men, they start to feel very listless and tired. And women who do night work get more breast cancer than women who don't.
I had no idea.
Yeah, it's all linked. Everything is linked. Every cell in your body, every cell is its own electrical generator. It generates its own electric and magnetic waves, and they all talk to each other. There is a constant molecular chatter going on, and just in one cell, there are millions of communications between the DNA and all the other organelles in the cell, just in there, without everything that's coming out.
Mm-hmm.
But the whole body is talking to all of itself all of the time. And generally, we're in a state of harmony.
Mm-hmm.
We are at equilibrium with the Earth's geomagnetic fields. We are at equilibrium with nature.
Mm-hmm.
We are all at equilibrium. But the moment you put microwaves in the air, you lose the equilibrium, because the microwaves entrain and potentiate all of the other less powerful waves in the body. I mean, they are minuscule in the body, minuscule. If you think of the end of an antenna of any little bug touching a leaf and getting an electrical communication between the stoma of the leaf and the antenna, it's the size of a pinprick, but they still communicate. There is communication between them. And
that is not just interesting, it's reassuring to me, because it means that everybody and everything communicates with everybody and everything.
When I was in a country, I was with a royal, and the royal took me into a huge, great big field. And I say this at my lectures, and I always say, I wish I were the one that had been clever enough to think this up. It's in one of my lectures to the Glastonbury environmental section. And I always wish I were the one clever enough to think this up. And it pains me to this day that I wasn't. But I went into a field with a royal who did not want to be publicized. And he said to me, he said, "Barry, tell me what you hear." And this is over in the Afrikaans area. And I listened, and I said, "Well, I can hear a couple of baboons or something over there, and there's something big over there. I don't know what it is. I hope it's not what I'm thinking it is." And he said, "No," he said, "if we were standing here in the spring, we would be shouting to each other." He said, because there would be trillions upon trillions of ants. They would be crawling all over these plants, crawling all over them. And there were hundreds and hundreds of plants. He said there would be birds picking up some of the ants, and it would be noisy. And the ants would be attacking other insects. And he said, what happens is these plants, they produce a sweet syrup on the leaves. He said they're sticky if you touch them. He said trillions of ant colonies, they climb all over this and they lick this syrupy stuff off, and they take it back to their big ant hills and colonies and termites. And he said, if a locust or something else lands on these bushes to eat them, the ants send out their signal. They swarm on these locusts and other insects and eat them and take them to pieces with their pinchers, and eat those as well. But they keep the bushes sound because it's their only source of livelihood.
Yeah.
And he said, since that microwave tower went up over there, the ants have lost their, they can measure all insects. Even humans can, actually, that we have the apparatus. We have, I'm trying to think of the particular cell. We have a particular cell, it'll come to me in a minute. We have a particular cell in the brain, and it will measure where we are in relation to the Earth's magnetic field. Cryptochrome, that's it.
What's the word?
Cryptochrome.
Cryptochrome.
We have cryptochrome pigment in certain cells, and it can measure where we are in relation to the Earth's magnetic field, the sun, and in some cases, the reflection of the sun from the moon. And the animals, we have lost some of this skill. It amazes me that the Americans haven't. They can always say north is that way. You know, we would never say where is north, south.
Because we don't know.
Would say, well, it's West Street.
Yes.
Where's West? Well, it's there, of course. You know. You have the cryptochrome pigment, and it's a very specialized. You have in your brain, the sun or the magnetic field from the Earth, it will cause two electrons to gain energy. They will go up a level along the electron band around the atomic structure, and they will come down at slightly a different rate to the one that gets the field first will go up, then the next, and it will come down like, but nanoseconds in between them. But the cryptochrome can pick that up, and bees are particularly good at this. The cryptochrome will pick it up, and it will know by the speed the electrons go up and down where you are in relation to the sun and the Earth's magnetic field. And they know exactly which way to go and where they live. But the moment you put the tower in the field, it disorientated all of the ants. And so they went where they thought was programmed in their brain that wasn't, and they just got lost and died. And he said, we have lost all our ants and all of our termites. Since then, and when I'm talking field, I'm talking something the size of this town. And he said, since then, our plants have been ravaged by locusts and everything. And that has stopped the production of our fruit, which means for the first time in the history of this country, we've had scurvy and rickets. For the first time in our history, we've had scurvy and rickets, with no vitamin C, no vitamin D. And he said, what we have to do now is import our fruit and margarines and butters and things with vitamin D in and eggs. We have to import everything from the country that put up the transmitter. And the country says, look, we know you're in a certain situation. You are locked into an agreement. You can't get out of this without becoming bankrupt, which is what you sign. But the country says, I'll tell you what we'll do. We will provide you with medicines, because the royal then said to me, we are getting around 40% more sick than we would normally have. And our health service now is broken. And the country that had put up the tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of transmitters said, look, we can help you out here. We will come in with the drugs you need. Your big pharmaceutical now moves in. We will come in with vitamins and minerals and things that you need and fruit. You will get them all at a next to no reduced price. But in return, we would like a piece of your land and mining rights. And they come in and they set up their boundaries, and we're talking sort of hundreds of miles.
Mm-hmm.
And they have this piece of land with mining rights. And then they know from their satellites that there is iridium, lithium, platinum, all these things underground, oil, whatever. And then they start mining. And this royal said to me, I had a complaint. And this was from an American firm. And the royal said, I had a complaint because in these countries, you could go to a royal and make a complaint.
Mm-hmm.
Is that okay, please?
Absolutely. It's like going to a court of law because that's what the king is.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And this person said to this royal, I have been working that farm for generations. My father worked it, my grandfather worked it, I'm working it. It is my family's life source.
Mm-hmm.
But on the road, there is a man with a gun, American. He is a soldier with a gun. And he said, this is now our territory. We have mining rights, farming rights. He said, and you cannot enter this land. And the man said, explained, I've got to go there.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, the man with the gun said, if you will go past me, I will shoot you. Simple as that. You are on American soil. I will shoot you. You have no right to be there. You are trespassing, and I have the legal right to shoot you. I suggest you go back home.
Wow. It's his land, his family's land.
For mineral rights, all the rights. And they're moving in with families. And of course, when you move in with families, you now have voting rights.
Mm-hmm.
And this royal said to me, he said, it took me a while to work out because it was so slow and just so organized, bang, 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 bang. And he said, I sat down and realized one night, Barry, he said, that within 50 years, I will have lost the viability of my country. 3 generations.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, you're smack on there. And I tell that story. And most places in the world, within 50 years, and I include Germany in this,
mm-hmm.
within 50 years, you will have lost the viability of your country due to immigration,
mm-hmm.
Your need for workers. It is all laid out. And he said, the funny thing is, we are paying them to do this. And the same with Germany now. Your country is slowly becoming bankrupt.
Oh, yeah.
And the reason is...
I'm well aware of that.
The reason is that the industries that have moved in, they are taking millions from your country on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm.
If you think of all the electricity that has to be generated, everything has to be charged, everything has to be paid for.
Mm-hmm.
Wi-Fi, cell phones, everything has to be paid
mm-hmm.
for. And virtually all of the money that is being earned by the industries is leaving the country.
Yes.
Okay.
Going into the pockets of what Catherine Austin Fitts calls Mr. Global, or the deep state.
Yeah. You have shops and they pay taxes, but it's nowhere near the amount that is leaving. And is it the richest chap in the world, just on the news 2 nights ago, his shares changed and he lost 167 billion. And he didn't even notice it was gone. 167 billion he lost. And he didn't even know. And he says, it'll come back. But in 50 years, you will have so many sick, so many children, only 1 in 8 will be born alive and well. You will need mass immigration to run your infrastructure and pay the taxes. They will have voting rights. It's
like a mafia system.
It is taking over a country by stealth.
Yeah. First causing the problem and then offering the solution, which is extremely expensive.
Yeah, that's it. And I do know that from our conversation yesterday that countries are visiting other countries and experimenting on people, as well as your own country experiment on people, because if you can find the particular frequencies that will subdue people, and they are now known, it's the easiest thing in the world with one of the HAARP apparatus. And HAARP can ionize the hydrogen and helium in the ionosphere, which is already ionized, but they can make it more ionized, and they can turn it into an electrical conductor and reflector.
There are people, can you explain about HAARP? Because there are people who are saying that's, of course, one of the major instruments for geoengineering. And there are people who are saying that it was used to cause the tsunami back in, I don't know, 10 years ago, 15 years ago.
It can be caused to...
what does HAARP stand for?
I think it's high-power activated radiation.
But again, it has to do with microwaves.
I wanted to draw your attention to an article in, here it is. You're going to get this copy.
Yes.
You're going to get this copy anyway. I would send an email to Simon. Funny enough, I read this the night before you came here. Here it is. Weaponizing the weather.
Yeah.
And the lady that wrote this is a very famous author on this, Elena Freeland, E-L-A-N-A Freeland. And she drew a picture. Here it is, HAARP. Where is she listed here? Here it is. HAARP. This is all on HAARP. It's on HAARP. I know there are 17 of them in the world now. It is HAARP. This one is in Gankoa, Alaska, and it stands for, here we are, High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program. And they have literally, the United States, they have turned the atmosphere around the planet into a weapon.
Mm-hmm.
And they can now, and she's drawn a very simple picture.
Yeah, I'll have to photograph that.
Yeah, but you can cause it's when you ionize the atmosphere. Space isn't space.
Mm-hmm.
There are lots of atomic structures in what we would call space, loads of them.
Mm-hmm.
And what you can do with HAARP is there are several things you can do. You can, depending on which frequency, you can send a particular frequency to ionize the upper atmosphere.
Mm-hmm.
And I think she's drawn a picture of it here, which she has. Yeah. You can ionize the upper atmosphere, and you can then induce lightning,
mm-hmm.
because the Earth is negative,
mm-hmm.
and the clouds are all positive,
mm-hmm.
and you induce mass lightning. Now, if you, from an aircraft, if you spray, you can, it can be ordinary sodium chloride, or you can put an even better chemical, it's silver iodide.
Mm-hmm.
If you put trillions of dust particles of silver iodide in the atmosphere, just drop them from a plane, trillions and trillions, over hundreds of miles, you get mass monsoons all of a sudden.
Mm-hmm.
And you can induce mass flooding. And
the first such incident that was reported occurred here in Great Britain in 1957, 52 even.
Mm-hmm. 52, they tried it out here,
mm-hmm.
and they caused mass flooding. The sides of the hills came down because they all turned to liquid mud. 38 people were killed. A whole village was destroyed. Homes were destroyed. The government obviously denied all knowledge of it. We have a program, the same as all Five Eyes countries.
Mm-hmm.
They have a program called active denial. When they create an environmental disaster,
mm-hmm.
they spring into what is active denial. They get the best lawyers, who are government paid, to handle the case.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, active denial says this case will not reach court for 50 years. And I have known 8 in the last 10 years. The soldiers that were told to stand in front of atomic bombs for radiation. In the Navy, our laboratories, our own government laboratories, they injected 20,000 service personnel with what they said were flu injections, but were actually cancer toxins to see how long it took them to develop cancer.
My God. So the military personnel is their favorite guinea pigs.
Yeah.
Mm.
I was invited to be one of them, but I was talked out of it because my partner knew what it was. I mean, I was monitoring some of the people.
Mm-hmm.
Porton Down is our secret base. You have Plum Island in the States. And we castrated all the Negroes in a certain country in Africa to cause sterility. That one has just come through 50 years on. There are 8 I know that have come through 50 years on. And this is active denial. And it's very easy for top lawyers to take 6 months to reply to a letter. And when they do, they say, I want the status of this person. I want their personal history, their medical history. I want to know if they're sane, employed, criminal record. I want to know if they've said anything. I want all the doctors. It's endless. And when they get information, they say, I want to know when this doctor was certified. Is this doctor qualified to say this? They bounce it back.
So do they use that information for character assassination? So that okay.
And this goes on, and they may only answer one letter in 6 months, and then when they get the results 6 months later, they reply. It's not difficult to take 50 years, and then when they get to court in 50 years, they have 3-stage. They say, well, look, everybody that was involved is dead. Who are you actually acting for? That's their first one.
Yeah.
They say, well, look, if it's the relatives, where are their birth certificates? How do we know they're relatives? And they start playing along.
So they're playing for time until all the relevant witnesses are dead.
And
this is,
judge, and I've only known it once, if a judge says, I am not having this in my court, and the evidence is there, they then come up with their trump card. They say, all of this is classified under the Official Secrets Act. None of it can come out in court. We will offer compensation, but we will not admit liability. And the judge says, you know, you can have compensation, but no liability. And that's the active denial program. And it's still active now, and it goes on all the time.
Everywhere, not just in this country, not just in the US, everywhere. That leads me to the question, obviously, it's not our governments. It's the people who are running our governments.
Oh, yeah. It is, who runs America? And I've got that, who runs. But with this one, you can cause flooding. You can reflect. Bounce is the wrong scientific word. You can reflect by elementary geometry microwaves down on a single house, because it is like a laser. Mathematically, the waves are what we call in tune. They're like a laser. Like a laser. And you can amplify the effect. You can have them bounce down on a single house or reflect down on a whole city. And if you bring in microwave engineering that I was reading about and studying in the 80s, a common thing with grave diggers is that when they dig graves, it is not now uncommon for them to develop bubonic plague, because the plague can lay in the ground dormant. It's called constructive interference, the laser. The plague can lie dormant in the soil. And when they eventually dig down and the plague is exposed to the wavelength of light, now it's active and the people get bubonic plague, but it's easily treated now with antibiotics. But in the 80s, it was realized that virtually all microorganisms under certain circumstances will go into what is easily termed hibernation.
Mm-hmm.
They will just go dormant.
Mm-hmm.
And they can lay dormant for, as far as we know now, thousands of years.
Oh my God.
Thousands of years. So they're now finding bacterium in rocks and in ice from the poles. And as soon as they're exposed to light, and now we're going into hundreds of thousands of years,
mm-hmm.
they suddenly become dormant. And
they wake up.
Yeah.
They wake up.
It's like an alarm clock.
Mm-hmm.
And what they have discovered is not only can you, with the right bacteria, discover what makes them dormant, but any scientist worth their salt could soon work out the frequency and the wavelength that will wake them up.
Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing to stop me if I wanted, and I said this in court in America, I was asked this, if I wanted to destroy your country and make myself $100 billion, I could. It would be so simple. I would go into America. I would take dormant bacteria, let's say your giant wheat fields that you
mm-hmm.
have. I would take a bacterium or virus that was known to be dormant under particular circumstances, but at a certain frequency could be made active.
Mm-hmm.
I would hire a helicopter. I would fly over your wheat fields. I would drop the bacterium very easily, and I would come back home. And then anytime, if I wanted then to ruin your wheat fields, I would hire masses of land if I had it.
Mm-hmm.
I would grow wheat. I would then, if I had the machine, which is not difficult to build, all you need is a cyclotron. I could build a HARP-type machine, or I could go back to America on holiday with a camera. I could trigger the dormant bacterium that would still be in the soil, washed
mm-hmm.
out all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
I would come back to my country. I would grow my wheat. All of your wheat fields would have the Black Plague or whatever it is,
mm-hmm.
wheat blight, whatever. I could ruin your entire crop for the United States for several generations
mm-hmm.
because the soil is contaminated. Meanwhile, mine are growing. I increase the price 100-fold and I sell it. I could do that with my knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
Now, imagine what a team of Harvard specialists, PhDs could do
mm-hmm.
with unlimited funds and a laboratory. Imagine what they could do. And this, I often think, could be behind.
Provided that they have absolutely no conscience and no empathy.
Well, even then they could be fooled. Your government could say, we are expecting an attack on our forests. Let's take Germany.
Mm-hmm.
You have mass forests.
Yeah.
We are expecting an attack on our forest. What would cause oak blight or whatever blight it is that
mm-hmm.
attacks your trees?
Mm-hmm.
Because we think we could be attacked. Here are some oak trees. I want you to work out the frequency and the blight and everything to do with what could cause oak blight by microwave radiation, because they could come here, set it all up, and then what we can do is we can set up a monitor to trigger a defense mechanism if that particular frequency is coming in by satellite. And and we can jam it.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, you now have the information to jam to ruin another country that you want to ruin. And you can make rain, you can cause any animal to become sick.
Mm-hmm.
Countries, all the cattle in the United States, you could plague, you could do absolutely anything you wanted to the world with microwaves and the knowledge of microwave warfare with bacteriums and viruses. You could take over the planet quite easily.
So ultimately, the conclusion is that microwave radiation is the tool that you can use for almost anything. You can cause diseases, you can use it for geoengineering. Most importantly, in my view, you can use it in order to upset the equilibrium of the universe, basically. Absolutely. Of us, yeah. Whose electrical frequencies should be in harmony with those that surround the planet and the universe.
The other thing you can do is you can change the direction of the massive air currents, mm-hmm. that the cycles that go around the planet. They're the big weather currents that zoom around the planet. Mm-hmm. They are roughly 5 miles up to 60 miles. Mm-hmm. They travel around 200 miles an hour. But with the HAARP machines, what you can do is you can give them a nudge, mm-hmm. because they are all ionically charged. And if you put up a similar charge, which you can do, similar charges like a magnet will repel. Mm-hmm. Now, if I wanted to divert the weather stream, the weather streams that they're called? Yeah, airstreams.
Airstreams. Mm-hmm.
If I wanted to divert the airstream, which carries much of the equatorial rain, mm-hmm. if I wanted to divert it over the Arctic, for instance, or over the desert to fertilize the desert, so I could grow crops and deprive somewhere else of rain, you've only got to go up there and put a constant charge, very high powered charge. You've only got to go up there and force it and change it by a degree. I mean, if you're sending a rocket to the moon and you want it to miss, you've only got to put a slight force on it, mm-hmm. of a degree,
and it'll go past it.
By the time it gets to the moon, it's virtually near Saturn.
Yeah.
So, and simple vector mathematics. Any student studying vector mathematics at university, I could do it. You've only got to work out the pressure, the force of the weather stream, the force, its speed, vector mathematics. You can come into it, you can nudge it, and you can actually move the weather stream. It will eventually come back, but it could be 200 to 300 years, because they tie in with the rock cycle, the water cycle, all the other cycles of the planet. Mm-hmm. But you can do that. Mm-hmm. You can deprive a country of water, and you can also irrigate countries that have none, mm-hmm. and then make your money there. It's done for warfare as well.
Yeah.
And you can, and I have seen and it's published in here, and I have seen the mathematics that it can be done. And I studied higher mathematics with my nuclear and atomic physics, and I know this is possible.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it is done, I don't know. But I know
if it's possible.
I know it is possible from HARPS around the world. It is possible to, with constructive interference, to send what they now call scalar waves right through the planet. You can cause resonance and you can make an earthquake anywhere you like.
Mm-hmm.
And I was told that the earthquake at the nuclear power plant in Japan, and I've seen the mathematics that actually guides it there.
Mm-hmm.
I have heard, which is not law, that Japan went into developing nuclear weapons. The United States said, you know, you use uranium-238 for your power stations. You do not need 235 and plutonium-91, 92 to generate electricity. That can only be used for atomic bombs.
Mm-hmm.
We advise you to stop.
And if you don't, we're going to cause Fukushima to explode.
Said, well, up yours. And I think
the Japanese said that.
Within a week, they had an earthquake and this can be done mathematically. Any scientist can show you where there are waves that will go, they're called muons. They will go right through, they're going through you and me now. They will go right through the planet, through the center, through the core, right through the planet, and not even interact with a single atom. They travel so fast, they exceed the speed of light. They go so fast, which theoretically is impossible, but it isn't, they do. And you can generate high active microwaves. You can have superconduction, super resonance, and you can have them, if you have them meet
and collide,
phase, where this is going, these are going like this, you have them meet in phase at the surface of the planet, then they're doing this, and you generate it is so easy to do that.
So this concludes our interviews for now with Barry Trower, but there will be more to come. I think this is absolutely mind-boggling in every respect. Thank you for watching.